Hello, Year 8. As we approach the point where we're going to start writing up our findings into why the English Reformation happened, I thought it would be useful to spend a few minutes just having a look at the timeline of the Reformation so we get some understanding of how long things took to happen. Okay, so the first date we're going to be looking at is the marriage of Arthur, Henry's older brother, to Catherine of Aragon, which happened in October 1501. Okay, now that marriage didn't last long, because Arthur died in April 1502. So marriage in October 1501, by the April of the following year Arthur was dead and Catherine of Aragon, no longer married to him, was single. The next date of significance is quite a jump forward. Another 7 years pass before Henry marries Catherine of Aragon. Okay, so let's just go back. Arthur dies of tuberculosis, 7 years pass, a marriage is suggested, and finally Henry marries Catherine of Aragon in 1509, 11th of June 1509. Just to focus on Henry's wars, I think it's important to know when he first decides to invade France and first decides to start fighting against France, which gets him into so much financial problems. On the 30th of June 1513, Henry VIII invades France. It goes well to begin with, but ultimately ends in defeat for him and a massive debt from fighting those wars abroad. Fast forward 3 years, the marriage of Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII brings their first child that survives. We've got the birth of Mary, who later becomes Queen Mary of England, on the 18th of February 1516. It is the following year that Martin Luther makes his 95 complaints and posts them to the door to his local church in Germany. So just think about that. Got 1516, the birth of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon's daughter. They're still very happily married at this stage, and it is the year later that Martin Luther makes his complaints. In 1521, following on from Martin Luther's complaints in 1517, Henry defends the Catholic Church against this spread of Protestantism and the spread of protests against the Catholic Church, and he's given the title of Defender of the Faith for the books he's written and the defence he's put up against the Catholic Church. So again, by 1521, still no clues that Henry VIII was going to either divorce Catherine of Aragon or in fact go against the Catholic Church and the Pope. It's not until 1527, so 6 years pass between him defending the Catholic Church and him making up his mind that he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon. So another 6 years of marriage between this and this. So in 1527, Henry VIII was sure now that he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon. Okay, so we're just going to skip back a few dates here to find where they first got married. There we go, 1509 was their marriage. And if we skip forward again through all of these dates that we've seen, 1527, he finally decides. So there are a number of years that they are happily married, and there's no mention of divorce, no mention of the break from Rome. In December 1532, it appears that Catherine of Aragon's replacement, Anne Boleyn, had fallen pregnant by Henry VIII, and then comes the very, very important year of 1533, which we're going to look at in a little bit more detail. So off we go out the timeline. The 15th of January 1533, Henry VIII married Anne Boleyn, and it was in May of 1533 that the marriage between Henry and Catherine of Aragon was finally declared null and void, which means it was declared no longer legal. They were no longer together. In September of 1533, the child that Anne Boleyn was carrying was born, and that was Elizabeth, later to become Queen Elizabeth of England. But the main timeline, November 1534, Henry made himself and was made the head of the Church of England. So this is the official point at which the break from Rome happens, 1534. And then in January 1535, as we saw in our last lesson, that was when the investigation of the monasteries began. So we just look at it there, we can't see the individual dates, but you can see just how many years passed between the marriage of Arthur, the break from Rome, and the dissolution of the monasteries. An awful lot of time passes. It doesn't all happen one after the other, day after day. There are periods between them.